Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really pivotal moment in American history, how the nation went from being pretty quiet and keeping to itself to a full-blown global superpower, and all in what feels like the blink of an eye.
Okay, so let's get right into it. We're talking about this absolutely dramatic shift at the turn of the 20th century. I mean, in just a few decades, the United States went from focusing on its own backyard to flexing its muscles across the entire planet. So the big question is, how on earth did that happen so fast?
And I mean, the change was just night and day. If you look at 1890, the whole vibe was keep out. All the energy was pointed inward, toward building up the country. But fast forward just 30 years to 1920, and the attitude had completely flipped to get involved. Now it's all about global trade and being ready to step into foreign conflicts. This wasn't just some minor policy tweak, it was like the country's entire personality had changed.
So, what was the spark? What lit the fuse for this incredible transformation? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was actually a perfect storm of these three really powerful ideas that were sweeping across the whole world, creating this intense atmosphere of ambition and competition.
First up, you've got imperialism. Think of it like a global land grab. All the major European powers were in this frantic race to claim colonies for resources, for markets, for power. And right at that moment, the American frontier was officially declared closed. So a lot of influential people started thinking, hey, we need a new outlet for all this American energy. Maybe that new frontier is overseas.
Then you add nationalism to the mix. And we're not just talking about simple flag-waving patriotism here. This was a super intense competitive pride that basically turned international relations into a zero-sum game. The thinking was, for us to win, someone else has to lose. American leaders were eager to prove that the U.S. could hang with any of the old European empires.
And the third piece of this puzzle? Militarism. There was this widespread belief that if you wanted to be a great nation, you absolutely had to have a great military to back it up. A powerful modern navy, especially, was seen as the key. How else could you protect your trade routes and defend this new global presence you were trying to build?
So, with these big ideas swirling around, the U.S. wasn't just going to sit on the sidelines and talk about it. It was time to act. And boy, did it take a decisive first step onto the world stage. It was a big one.
That huge turning point was the Spanish-American War in 1898. It started out as a fight over Cuba's independence from Spain, but it very quickly morphed into a showcase for America's new military power and its growing imperial ambitions. The war itself was short, but its consequences, they were massive, and they're still felt today.
But public support for a war doesn't just happen. It was whipped up big time by this new, really aggressive style of media called yellow journalism. Newspaper giants basically used shocking headlines and over-the-top stories to get the American public fired up and screaming for a fight.
And victory, well, victory came with some serious prizes. When the dust settled, the United States suddenly found itself with an overseas empire. It now controlled territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. America wasn't just a nation that stretched from coast to coast anymore. It was a global power with colonies thousands of miles away.
Now, it's really important to remember, this expansion wasn't always seen as some noble act of liberation. This powerful quote from Queen Liliuokalani of Hawaii really captures the fierce resistance from the people whose nations were being swallowed up. The overthrow of her government, backed by American business interests, was a pretty clear signal of America's aggressive new ambitions in the Pacific.
Okay, so with all this new power and these new territories, American presidents needed a playbook, right? They started developing these bold, new foreign policies, and they were all specifically designed to make one thing clear. America was in charge of the Western Hemisphere.
And this table just lays it out so clearly. You had three different presidents with three pretty different styles. Theodore Roosevelt had his big stick policy, basically using the threat of military force to act as the region's policeman. Then his successor Taft preferred dollar diplomacy, using American money and business investment to get what he wanted. And then you have Woodrow Wilson, who tried a moral diplomacy, promising to support only democratic governments. So three presidents, three different strategies, but they all pointed to the same goal: American dominance.
But if you want the ultimate symbol of this new American power, look no further than the Panama Canal. I mean, what an incredible achievement. It was a mind-blowing feat of engineering, for sure, but it was also a masterclass in political power plays.
Building that canal cemented America's economic and military control over one of the most important shipping lanes on the entire planet.
So all of this, the new empire, the new policies, the new power, it was all building towards something. It was building towards the ultimate test of America's new role on the world stage, the Great War in Europe, what we now call World War I.
You know, America really tried to stay out of it. President Wilson actually won re-election with the slogan, "He kept us out of war." But as this timeline shows, it just became impossible to ignore. You have Germany's submarines sinking ships with Americans on them. And then the final straw, the shocking Zimmerman telegram, where Germany tried to get Mexico to attack the U.S. Neutrality was officially off the table.
And getting into that war, wow, it meant changing everything back home. We're talking about a total mobilization of the entire country. There was a military draft, massive propaganda campaigns to keep morale up, and even new laws like the Espionage Act, which made it a crime to criticize the war. It was a period of intense patriotism, but it came at the cost of some serious limits on civil liberties.
So the war ends, the guns go silent, but the story's not over. The war had changed America for good, but now the nation was facing a whole new set of challenges, figuring out what peace looked like and dealing with all these deep-seated fears bubbling up at home.
President Wilson shows up to the peace talks in Europe with this incredibly idealistic, grand vision for the future. He called it his 14 points, and it proposed this whole new world order based on fairness, open negotiations, and most importantly, a global organization called the League of Nations that would prevent a war like this from ever happening again.
But back in the U.S., a lot of people were thinking, no way. They were exhausted by global problems. They just wanted to go back to focusing on America. The Senate, worried about getting dragged into every future European squabble and losing its power to declare war, ended up rejecting the whole treaty. America would not be joining Wilson's League of Nations.
And all this anxiety and uncertainty after the war, plus news of the communist revolution in Russia, it all boiled over into this massive nationwide panic that we now call the First Red Scare. A deep fear of communism and any kind of radical ideas just swept the country, leading to widespread suspicion, paranoia, and some pretty serious government crackdowns.
And this quote from the Attorney General at the time, A. Mitchell Palmer, it tells you everything you need to know about the official mindset. He was trying to justify the infamous Palmer raids, where thousands of suspected radicals were rounded up. And he did it by painting communism not just as a political belief, but as this out-of-control prairie fire that was literally eating its way into the heart of America.
So that's where this 30-year whirlwind leaves America, at a total crossroads. It had become, without a doubt, a world power with interests all over the globe. But the country was deeply divided on what to do with that power. It left this huge question hanging in the air. After stepping onto the world stage in such a big way, could the nation ever really go back to being isolationist, or had its destiny been changed forever?